Hi, friends! Welcome to another all ages episode of Paige the Puppet. And today we are really lucky to have a special guest. She is a bookkeeper, and I'm going to have her introduce herself so she can tell all about who she is and what she does.
Know what you want and never give up.
Don't try to pour from an empty cup. Champagne marketing on a beer budget.
It's business advice from Paige the Puppet.
Sounds good. Thanks, Paige. I'm Chantelle, and I'm the owner of Bornn Bookkeeping in Red Deer, Alberta, and I'm very happy to be here with you today.
Thank you. And so my very first question is, what is the difference between a bookkeeper and an accountant? Lots of people who are starting a business have that question.
Absolutely. So bookkeepers and accountants run in tandem with each other, but we tend to be very different. So the role of the accountant is to provide more of a high-level guidance for your business when it comes to things like structure and tax planning and partnerships and making sure that everything flows from point A to point B when it comes to keeping the government happy and making sure that the company has healthy cash flow. When it comes to bookkeepers, we're more of the middleman support raft person. So we will work with you to make sure your bank accounts are reconciled, all of your expenses are recorded properly, and any little questions when it comes to deductions and sales tax and payroll support and GST filing and dealing with the CRA on your behalf, because I fight with them pretty much every day. And it's a lot of fun. So there's lots of moving pieces and parts. So we're more of your middleman support to then flush it up to the accountant for more of that higher level, but we're more of your day-to-day girl or gal Friday to support you.
Awesome. When it comes to bookkeeping, can you provide a few tips? Because I know sometimes people come in with grocery bags full of receipts, and that's not the preferred way. Can you tell us the preferred way?
Sure. Well, actually, to tie into that, let's talk about some that really aren't the preferred way. So number one, no receipts at all. So it's very important that you have source documents to back up your expenses. But like you mentioned, sometimes we get grocery bags, but sometimes we get garbage bags. Sometimes we get banker boxes. Sometimes we get other random vessels filled with pieces of paperwork that we have to pay someone to sort through. So the preferred way is, one, establish your own process, but typically anything with like a file folder sorter, if you sort it by month or sort it by type, and get everything all together in one area, however you choose to file it, then bring it to us, and then we'll take care of it. So we either establish a filing system for you, or we'll work within your current filing system. But if you can go ahead and basically pre-sort it either by expense type or by month, it sure does make a big difference versus having to file around in receipts and try to figure out what we're claiming and what we're not.
And it will cost you a lot more if you have them disorganized, because you have to pay your team to go through those receipts if they're not done, right?
Absolutely. And then on the other side of that, if you bring it directly to an accountant and provide them with a garbage bag full of receipts, you're definitely going to be paying a lot higher bill to them than you would to us, but you would be saving quite a bit of money on your side if you sat down at your table with file folder while watching a TV show or something and sorting your stuff and bringing it to us that way. But we also recognize some people are busy and that's what they want to use us for, and we're more than happy to provide that service.
Oh, okay. So they can do that if they're really busy and they have a good excuse, maybe.
Absolutely. Yep.
And money to burn. Okay. Let me think. What was my next question? Now my brain went poof. Does your brain ever do that?
My brain goes poof probably about 57 times a day. It's amazing the stuff that I can retain about my clients and filing dates, but then I can't remember why I walked into a room. So I completely understand, Paige.
Yeah, that happens. I hear it especially happens when you are a mama. And you are a mama, aren't you?
I am. Yes, I am a mama and a business owner. And sometimes I feel like an octopus that needs extra arms.
And do you have any tips for those people who have young ones at home to help them mom and being an entrepreneur? Do you have any hot tips?
I would say one is really communicate with your village and explain to them what it looks like and what type of supports you need. So when people offer things to you, like saying, is there anything I can do to support you, or let me know if you need anything, be really specific in what your asks are. So saying, yes, it would be wonderful if you were able to help me out with some childcare on Saturday between noon and 6. Does that work for you? Because I'm going to be doing task ABC. Because people are more than willing to help you if you're really clear with your expectations. Now, I know that also comes from a point of if you have privilege and you have family members or extended family members or a partner to be able to step in and help you, or the ability to, multiple grandparents. And I recognize that everyone has that. So that does take a little bit more planning. But also if you communicate with your child, obviously depending on age. Sometimes I've had my daughter come in and hang out with me, watching a TV show or playing with her Thomas the Train book or hammering away on my computer. It also just lets her know that there's a different side to you, and also kind of gives them something else to look up to, knowing that their mom can also have a different role in their life. And it's not that we just want to spend time away, but we're also doing really important things and becoming our own person.
That's awesome. I think that's really good advice because the kids need to understand what we're doing a little bit. Now, you have a new office. You just moved into a new office recently. Can you tell me anything that would help in what you learned in making this move?
What I learned in making this move is, or whenever you're planning on making an office move, is just because it's the first opportunity that comes along, it doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to be the right one. We're very happy with our office location. And we looked for certain things, especially during times of a pandemic, where we have split up office space, where we've got different office locations throughout the building, closable doors, really good ventilation, which really just gives us the opportunity to be able to work in a COVID-safe manner while making our clients and our colleagues feel really comfortable. One other thing to really look for is things like automated thermostats. So it can tend to get really cold in here in the summer, really hot in here in the winter, just based on how the temperature fluctuates. So more of a set it and forget it kind of style. Figure it out with your colleagues, battle it out, and then put a label on it and say, don't touch. Another thing is communal. I will give the best possible advice. This is for my corporate world. Communal fridges are a nightmare. Label it, date dot it, put your name on it and say when it needs to get thrown away, and then make someone responsible for cleaning out that fridge every week, so that you're not sitting there rifling through someone's old salad, because it really does cause resentment much more than you think.
Oh, wow. I never really thought of that. You include your dog a lot in your social media. Could you tell me a little bit about how that started to happen?
Yeah, so I've had bulldogs, for years. And so we had our sweet girl named Mavis, who would have been 9 years old this February, who would occasionally come with us to the office. We lost her back in February of 2021. Or no, my goodness, I'm dating myself. Nope, that would have been October of 2020. Sorry, that we had lost her. And it was sad, and she didn't get as much of an opportunity to come to the office, just based on the layout of the office and where we were. Then when we moved into a different office space, it's a little bit more dog friendly. We had gotten Mabel, and Mabel joined our family in April, and we really committed to bringing her with us to the office so that she can be here with us during the day. She also travels with my husband during the day when he's out on job sites. So when you have a dog in here and she's a real character, you tend to end up getting some pretty funny content, whether it's just for your own use or even now for social media. So we jokingly refer to her as our office manager, and she gets into everything, all types of shenanigans. Actually created her own Instagram account called Accountability. So it's a bulldog / accounting page, which we've just started getting going, which is kind of interesting.
It is. It's really cute.
Yeah, so it's kind of fun. So we share a lot of her stuff on social media. As of today, she's actually technically been banned from down the hallway because we've had a couple of indecent urination issues happening. So she's on a little mini probation, but it's lots of fun having her here, and my clients really like seeing her, and she's just a pile of fun. And I love the idea that I can bring her to work. She's not home by herself, and just kind of really brings on that whole kind of family vibe in the office, so long as she's not eating my colleague's shoes. So
yeah, they don't like it much when their shoes get eaten.
No, she's pretty cool, but she can be a giant pain in the ass sometimes. So we just kind of roll with it. She's kind of our problem colleague, but you do what you got to do.
Absolutely. And it's so awesome that you're able to bring the love into the office, because a lot of bookkeepers, they're seen as, just, you like numbers. So that's kind of weird, and it seems kind of boring. And so having the dog kind of makes it a little more exciting, and maybe people will bring their paperwork in more often when they need to, huh? But I suppose you do a lot of work virtually for your clients now. That's probably changed since the beginning of your career, sort of thing.
Yeah, so technology has really evolved, and we were a firm that got involved very quickly with the whole concept of cloud software. So for the last 4 years since we were started, we've been very open to platforms like QuickBooks Online. And that gives us the ability to connect businesses all over the place. So we have businesses obviously in Central Alberta. We also have businesses that we support in Manitoba. We have businesses we support in BC, and then other bigger centers in Alberta, such as like Edmonton, Calgary, Northern Alberta, near Slave Lake, out by Elk Point, Sundre. So we've got a really good reach, and having the ability to share and collaborate with something like a QuickBooks Online gives us the ability to support people immediately, but also gives them the option to be in control of their books and their financials, so they can actually go in and look and see the work that we're doing. Or we can also do work share. So if we have an administrator helping us out, we'll go in and we'll be able to collaborate at the same time, which really takes away that whole gatekeeper mentality that finance has had for the longest of time, where you give me the information, I hold the information, and then I give it to you. It's much more of a collaborative environment. We're kind of a choose your own adventure bookkeeping service.
Oh, I like that concept. Choose your own adventures. They're so fun. So a lot of our viewers are accidental entrepreneurs. Did you always want to be a business owner, or are you too an accidental entrepreneur?
Definitely an accidental entrepreneur. I have always been the behind the scenes support person in any job that I've ever had. So I was always the person you would go to if you needed something done or prepared. And a big part of my background is finance to a degree, but also things like auditing and risk management. This happened entirely by accident. I was graciously put into a bookkeeping course by a former manager, owner. And I found it really interesting because I find more things like patterns and behaviors more interesting than say 1 + 1 is 2. I'm actually quite terrible at math. I missed times tables in 3rd grade. So I've always struggled with math straight up through my whole life. When it comes to things like patterns and behaviors of numbers and how they fit together, that's been more sort of my repartee. Anyway, so I took my bookkeeping course, and then I started doing books a little bit for my husband's business and a friend. And back in 2017, when my daughter was 6 months old, I went for a hair appointment with a brand new hairdresser. She asked what I did. I mentioned that I've also done some books. She said, well, I need a bookkeeper. And I'm like, well, I'm not really doing it for people out, out in the world. I've got the 6-month-old baby. And then she called me and said, hey, my books are ready. So that's kind of how it happened. So it literally happened by accident. We've been kind of always organically growing by word of mouth and referral by amazing friends and social media contacts. So 4 years later, here we are. It's literally how it just evolved into this really cool, really weird, sometimes a really stressful thing. But I don't know if I ever would have taken the plunge by myself, to be honest.
That's an awesome story. And you know what? I find it is really common. Where do they hang out? In the groups online and that sort of thing. There's lots of stuff about, oh, plan your business and do this and do that. And then I go out into the real world and the people didn't start their businesses that way. According to the books and the theory. And that's why I like to bring the different stories together so people can understand that it doesn't happen the way that they say in the books all the time. And that brings me to something that has to do with bookkeeping. When do you think a person with a small business should get a bookkeeper?
Should get incorporated?
To get a bookkeeper.
Oh, to
Because
get
I
a
think you
bookkeeper.
would get a bookkeeper before you get incorporated. And incorporated, isn't that a question for the accountant?
Typically, yes. Your accountant would be able to give you a much better read on whether or not it's time to get incorporated based on the type of business that you're doing, type of structure that you have within the business, tax planning, and that kind of stuff. But when you should get a bookkeeper, I have met clients that have literally just started their business, or they are sole entrepreneurs who make just the coolest handmade crafts, and they've decided to reach out from the get-go because they feel uncomfortable with the concept of doing it on their own. I have had huge companies that have never had a bookkeeper and handled it internally their whole time, and then just decided that it's probably time to do it. So basically, if it feels unnatural to you, or you hate it, if you actually hate looking at your numbers, or hate dealing with your bank statements, or hate dealing with your receipts, or if it's something that you always constantly push off, then that's when that's time to start exploring the idea of talking to a bookkeeper. And I think there's a perception out there that you need to be a really big business, or you need to have earned a whole pile of money before you have one or can afford one. I know with us, back to that whole choose your own adventure thing, we work collaboratively with you. So if you're looking for just the bare bones basic stuff, just a little bit of support, we can help you out with that. And sometimes for my really small businesses or ones just getting started off, that's something that really works well for them. So we can also ebb and flow with what you need. So if you're going through a period where it's really slow and you want to take on some of it yourself, we're good with that. You start to hit your busy season, bring us that box of receipts and we'll jump in and take care of it for you. It's also a lot of give and take. So it doesn't have to be an all-in kind of thing. We'll always flow with what you have. So if you're nervous because you are a new entrepreneur and don't know whether or not you need a bookkeeper, do you like dealing with the paperwork? Some people really do. If you don't, reach out and talk to somebody, because it doesn't have to be an all-encompassing thing. We can also just be there just to support you and guide you and grow with you.
Oh, that's awesome. So it really can be any time that the business owner feels like they need that kind of support.
Absolutely.
Speaking of support, have you found that as a business owner that you get adequate support? And if so, where do you find it?
What type of support are you talking about? Are you talking about government support? Are you talking about community support or family support?
I think I'm talking more about support in your business, in being an entrepreneur, and in being a business owner and being your own boss, as opposed to being an employee. Because, when you're an employee, a lot of times there's different programs that you can take and you can learn things. But how do you do that as an entrepreneur?
So there's a couple of different things that you can do. Number one, reach out to your local community futures. Community futures has branches all over the place, and they offer everything from business plans to almost like a little bit of business counseling to courses that you can take that will support you as an entrepreneur. It's absolutely incredibly valuable, and it's worth the conversation for sure. Those are kind of those structural supports. The next piece of support is networking and education. So with myself, I absolutely 100% recommend Wow Women in Business as a resource for you. And there's different levels of involvement you can have, with everything from just Facebook groups to throw things out there, to have conversations with other entrepreneurs. And you might even network with entrepreneurs who technically would be considered competition for you. I love meeting new bookkeepers, and I've made so many friends through networking and being able to talk with someone else who actually understands what you're going through versus viewing them as a competitor. So that would be one of them. And then also finding other little networking chapters that work for you. So sometimes you can go through Facebook, or you can go through local community groups and just talk to somebody who gets it. Because I find when you're on the outside as an employee and you're really invested in your job, it can feel like, I could do this, I could own this business and I could run it, but it's totally different kettle of fish when you're on the other side. Like, I thought I knew how it worked because my husband's been self-employed since 2014, but had operated his business long before then. And it wasn't until we hit go and purchase the business, we actually realized how different it is when you're all in, when that paycheck isn't coming in unless you can go collect on it. I find that sometimes you'll be in a position where family and friends and other people in your life don't really understand, why do you work every weekend? Why do you have to work late? Why do you have to miss out on some certain events? Until they get into it, and then they go, oh, I understand. Because it is all encompassing. And when you're in growth mode, it can feel really lonely and isolated because, again, if you have people in your life that are used to having that paycheck coming in if they go to work, knowing that your mortgage payment relies on you getting paid and making sure your kids have shoes, it's just a totally different feeling. So the more people you can surround yourself in that have the same types of issues, or at least the same mindset, it just helps you feel a lot less isolated, alone, and quite frankly, screwed up and crazy.
Absolutely. I love the reality of that. That is so awesome. And I'm really excited because you said Community Futures, and Mama used to work for Community Futures.
That's awesome.
And yeah, that's how she learned to be a small business coach. And then you said, wow. And you know what? Mama's a member of WOW too. So that's really cool that you said two things that we really connect on. And yes, it is so important to have that support and realize, but you talk about working these late nights and the weekends and that sort of thing. Do you find a way to balance it, or are you still do you find that a challenge?
I definitely find that a challenge. Specifically because of the pandemic, my role has changed with my clients. Before, it was a very traditional, bring me your stuff, I'll take care of the entries, reconciliations, like those basic pieces. But what I found when the pandemic came in, I ended up becoming like a government liaison between the business owner and the supports that were available. And with the way that things came in when it came to subsidies and supports and grants, they came in so fast and the rules were changing. And it was a real sense of stress and despair and desperation and people losing their businesses and having to lay off staff that I did as a blue Libra empath. I did take a lot of that emotional piece on myself. So it was a really tough couple of years while we were very busy, and I'm so grateful to everyone that supported our business. Emotionally, it did take quite a big toll on myself and my staff because everything feels so heavy and everything feels very rushed and very important and no margin of error. So when it comes back down to that whole work-life balance, I'm still struggling a little bit to recognize that it's okay if I leave at 4 o'clock. The world's not going to come to an end. And it's okay if I miss out on that Saturday and if I have to push something a little bit. Everything just felt so go, 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 and time sensitive, and everything felt like a 5-alarm fire. So I'm still really struggling with the concept that it's okay to take some time off. It's okay to not be here. So that's something I'm continuously working on. And it's probably going to feel that way for a little while until things start to level out.
Absolutely. And you chose kind of a rough business to be in when it comes to the work-life balance. I've read that there are statistics. I have to bring them up, but I know that it is a tough industry and that there are sometimes like those end of the year times and stuff like that, when the things are due and everybody's so rush, where it's impossible to avoid the long days and the craziness because of the industry. And sometimes we have to, just roll with the punches when it comes to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you say that the pandemic is changing a lot of things for you. Has there any big lessons that you've learned just from the results?
Yeah, I think so. Number one is, as best as you can, try and keep your business books up to date. Because what we found when the pandemic hit and the business supports were available, there was lots of different caveats on whether or not a person would be approved and things like that. But if your stuff was behind and your taxes weren't filed, there's a possibility you were going to miss out on some pretty critical supports during that time. Two, I would say figuring out what the role of staff looks like. So clients that would operate more so on things like subcontractors when an employee would be more appropriate. The government is watching that a little bit more. And then we found a lot with things like wage subsidies weren't eligible to people that were going ahead now and, didn't have T4 income. So making sure that you're paying your people appropriately based on their type of job and the type of industry, just so we don't turn around and get our hands slapped. And then I think also remote work, and what remote work looks like. There's been a lot of conversations about how industries are changing, how we don't need these big office towers, or people don't necessarily need to be in the office. But some interesting fallout comes from that. One, things about like property. So for example, if I have client information that I'm letting one of my employees take home, what does that look like for me to have them track it and sign it out? And what does it mean for the security and the confidentiality pieces? Knowing that if they're going to work on their home office, how do we track it appropriately so everyone feels comfortable with the information leaving the office? What does it look like for business development and professional development? Because I've had staff that are mamas and have had to stay home and educate their kids and deal with all those types of things. Well, if they are missing out on one-on-one time with me or with their other colleagues, their professional development suffers. All of a sudden it's been 2 years and they haven't had as much opportunity to be immersed in things or learn from me, and trying to catch them up that way. So it's interesting trying to figure out what that looks like. If you're going to have a half remote or a partially remote lifestyle for work, what are we doing to make sure these people are feeling supported and they're feeling educated and feel like they're getting the same opportunities as people who are working in-house? So it's just been a couple just funny little things that have popped up there, and just mitigating them as we go, because it's something we've never dealt with before.
And hopefully never ever deal with again. So moving on to the next question, you've given me so much to think about. I don't think I have any questions left, but I do want to ask you, is there something that you want to tell my fans who are creative, independent, small business owners from around North America mostly, although I have a couple of viewers in Australia, I noticed. But for most part, they're small, independent, small business owners. And do you have any advice or something that I missed that's really important for them to know?
I would say, number one, if you're thinking about going into business, give it a try. Maybe don't put all of your eggs in one basket. So if you have a full-time job, but you're able to do something on the side, a part-time gig or a hobby that you turn into an opportunity, really be pragmatic about that decision, knowing that if you have money coming in from your day job that's going to support your family and support your mortgage and things like that, by all means, go on the other side and give it a try. You don't need a full-blown operation accounting software if you're going to sell beautiful handmade creations or other little services and things like that. Just track your money. Track your personal money. Because what I see a lot is people that go, hey, I made $6,000 worth of sales this year, which is amazing. But then you have to look at what personal money did you put into it and what are your actual expenses? Like, what did you actually profit? Because if you made $6,000, but you spent $7,000 of your own money to make it come to fruition, you actually lost $1,000. So it's really important to track every single penny, even on an Excel spreadsheet for the first little while, just to make sure that you're charging enough for your product and that you aren't losing money in the interim. If it's just a passion project and you're doing it for fun, as long as you know where you're standing with it, that's the most important thing. But people, I think, kind of get jazzed about the idea that their stuff's out there and that they're making sales, but you have to look at the other side. You have to look at the bottom half of those expenses and making sure that you're making money or breaking even, or if you're not, that is something that you're okay with. But yeah, track every penny.
And you say that even an Excel spreadsheet is good enough for tracking in the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Just positives. You know, your income is positive, your expenses are negative, run a sum, see where you're at. But if you really look at what your costs are, it will help you determine if you're charging enough. Because right from the get-go, if you're taking a look and going, so let's say you are making bracelets and you're selling your bracelets for $5 each. But what we refer to is something called cost of goods, which is basically all the little widget pieces that combine together to make the bracelet. So all of your wire and your beads and everything like that. So if you're taking a look and going, I'm selling this for $20 or $5 rather, and then going, but my wire and my beads and everything cost me $4.50. Well, it doesn't take into account all of your other expenses, your shipping, your bank charges, your social media to advertise it, your website, all of those other little things. If you're looking right away and your cost of goods is already really low, your profit's really low, or in the negative, you know right away you're not even charging enough to cover your basics, let alone your operating expenses. So that's why gross profit is super important.
Absolutely. And for those fans, we actually have a little bit of an episode about that. I will put that down in the description so you can learn some of the formulas you can use for figuring out those things. Important to know your numbers. Now, Mama always says you should have 2 bank accounts so that you can keep the money separated more easily. Do you advise that?
I do. So if you ever make the decision to become incorporated, it's mandatory that the corporation has its own bank account. And those bank accounts must be fully reconciled to the penny every month. That's an absolute requirement. If you're a sole proprietor and you are just using a personal bank account, the recommendation is yes, you have 2 separate bank accounts, one for your life and then one for your business. The reason why this is important is that in the event of a CRA audit, so we're all going to knock on wood, in the event of a CRA audit, you want them to only be looking at the business bank account, because if they're mixed, it's open season for all your information. And if they find a reason to freeze your accounts, then you have problems, because if your mortgage is coming out of one of them or is coming out of the shared account and your account gets frozen, then you're really in trouble. Treat it like church and state. Keep that shit separate.
Good advice. And speaking of audits, is it true that solopreneurs are audited more often?
Absolutely. There is a bit of a mentality out there that I'm a small fish, why would they care? They care very much, because ultimately tax dollars come in form T4 income. So if you're working somewhere and you're paying taxes and you're paying your federal taxes and paying your CPP and paying into EI. When you are a small business and making small business income, tax laws are a little bit different. So the government is going to be keeping a bit more of an eye on you and making sure that you're operating your business effectively. So if you're running every single meal through your company, every single vehicle expense to your company, and it's deemed not eligible, then you can find yourself into some trouble. But yeah, unfortunately, it's back to shooting fish in a barrel. There's a lot more little tiny goldfish in that pond versus going after the big fish that have tax lawyers. So basically, keep it as clean as possible. Give the government no reason to come after you, but keep your stuff separated, keep it organized. And if you can present it in a clean, organized, and efficient manner, they're probably going to leave you alone.
Great advice. And just as a little thing, it's not like the IRS on the movies. The CRA is pretty nice mostly. You just have to make sure you have your information there, and as long as you're doing what you're supposed to, there's no problems.
Absolutely. And for the most part, if you go to them before they come to you, they're much nicer to play with. If you know that there's a GST problem, or if you know there's a payroll issue, or you're going to approach them with payment arrangements, they're much happier to deal with you in that moment when you approach them versus them having to come after you. So for the most part, if you find yourself in a position where you've got a big balance due, go ahead and reach out. The other recommendation I have is whenever you do have a bookkeeper or an accountant, add them as what's called a CRA rep. So we come on for our clients as CRA reps, and we're the first line of defense. So if there's an issue with GST or payroll problems or payments not being processed properly, they'll reach out and they'll call me, and I'll deal with it. And then I will refer back to you and let you know what happened or what your involvement level needs to be. But then that way you don't have to be bothered with the phone call. And if I have all the information in front of me, I usually can stop the problem 98% of the time.
That's a real big bonus of having a bookkeeper, I would say.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay, I think that we have covered a lot of ground today. Like as we said, with accidental business owners, sometimes you could get behind, but don't be ashamed. Just reach out for help from the people that are around you, like your friendly neighborhood bookkeeper. And thank you so much for joining me. I know that my fans will have gotten so much information from you. And I will add a little tag on the end for my American viewers. I would just like to say it is been great to see you, and bye for now.
Bye, Paige. Thanks for having me. Take care.
Know what you want and never give up.
Don't try to pour from an empty cup. Champagne marketing on a beer budget.
It's business advice from